All right, everyone, welcome. I have a short practice for you at the wall. Today we're going to be working with Utkatasana, which you might know as chair pose. I prefer the translation fierce pose because it does feel fierce sometimes. We are going to be using variations on this shape to play with how the joints of the lower body are working together as you bend and straighten the knees, and to play with what's happening with the muscles up around the hip and how they're helping control that movement so that everything is working together really well in the lower body as you're bending the knees. Now, if you have discomfort in the knees or anywhere else in the body, it's important to pay attention to that. If this practice doesn't work for you, make sure you check in with a knowledgeable teacher or yoga therapist who can walk you through how to do this in your unique body. This can be really good for helping with knee discomfort or helping to prevent knee discomfort for that matter by really helping us coordinate and find stability in the hips as well as the knees and the feet. So I have with me a yoga strap which I've fastened into a loop. If you don't have a strap, you could use something like a scarf, a belt, a dog leash, something that is maybe even tied. And I'll show you how big you're going to want this in a minute when we use it. And I also have a block here. If you don't have a yoga block, you could use something of a similar size, a Tupperware container, a tissue box, rectangular tissue box, or you could even use something like a folded cushion or a folded blanket. This is going to go in between your legs. And so grab your stuff, and we're going to come to stand at the wall. As you're standing at the wall, you're going to want your feet to be a little bit forward of the wall, and that's to allow for space to bend the knees in a minute. Your hips, back of your hips is going to be on the wall somewhere, and somewhere in your upper back is going to be on the wall. Probably your lower back is going to curve away from the wall, so you have a little bit of a space back here. And it may be that in your body, when you're relaxed here, that your head and your shoulders sit a little bit away from the wall. So if that's the case, I'd rather you let that happen instead of using tension to press your upper back, shoulders, and head back towards the wall. So we're working here in the lower body. It's going to work better if you let the upper body just kind of organize itself here. When we come down into Utkatasana here, bending the knees, all kinds of things can happen when we do that. So some of us will get discomfort, and if that's the case, you're going to try to let that guide your practice. So you maybe are only coming down a little bit to the point where you're not increasing your discomfort by doing so. The other thing we might notice is as you're bending your knees here and coming in, is that some of us are going to get some sense of wobbliness. We're not feeling super strong and coordinated here, but the legs are rather drifting as you're coming either up or down or both. Or some people might get the knees coming in or out consistently as we're bending. You can always change how far your feet are from the wall if that helps with comfort level. So you can play around with that as well. What we're going to do is we're going to use the props that we have to provide our body with an external sense of stability. So the stability is coming from this stuff. And it's also going to help us connect to some of the muscles around the hips. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the block between the legs. Now, I find that depending on your individual body, for comfort, we may need to change this. So one option is certainly that you put it in this orientation all the way between the legs. If this really digs in and is uncomfortable in the upper thighs, you can play with turning the block this way and having it be a little bit lower. And then for some of us who are wider through the pelvis, we might actually find that having this block wider is really what feels the best for us. So I want you to feel empowered to make shifts there. And then don't get too comfortable because we actually are going to step into this loop here. And you may actually find maybe it makes sense to do this in the other order depending on your body. And I'm going to want this loop to go around the outer thighs, and I'm going to want it to be tight enough that it stays here pretty much on its own. So you're going to get yourself set up, okay? And as we're standing here, I want you to see if you can be here without needing to squeeze in on that block or press out into the strap, but you're just here and the props are just here. So sometimes we need to do a little adjustment of the distance between the feet or the positioning of the props to make that happen. You're going to feel into where your upper back and your hips are on the wall. You're going to take a few breaths here, breathing in and breathing out. And then you're going to feel both legs working together here as you bend the knees and come down into your version of Utkatasana. Now, for some of us, before we get pain, this is going to be a very small movement, which is completely fine. Some of us are going to feel like we can come down quite far here. What I want you to pay attention to is we're not squeezing in or squeezing out as we move. We're just allowing the block and the strap to provide a little more information to our bodies, so that as we're coming down and coming back up, the thigh bones are staying about the same distance apart. And you might come up and down a few times. This is lovely if you have a really slidey wall. This is hard if you have a really textured wall. I'm a little more on the textured side here. So this isn't my favorite wall to do this on, but it works. And then you might come down and hold. Now while you're holding and breathing, you're noticing sensations. We have quite a lot of support here, so you might see where you might be holding some tension you don't need. And then you might see what happens if you squeeze in on that block. What do you notice in your feet, in your lower legs? Can you feel most of the work coming up here in the thighs and not coming from your lower legs here, in fact? And then if we press out into the strap, again, can you get that work coming from up here and not so much down from the lower legs? And then you're going to let that work relax, and you're going to see if you can just come up. And then we might come away from the wall. We might loosen the strap up a little bit and release, standing and noticing sensations. So depending on where you're at with this work, that might feel like a really lovely place to practice for a little while. You may just stay there, enjoying that stability that's provided from the outside. We also can practice, so you may find that either the block or the strap feels the most useful for you, or that you just want to separate them out. So as you get more practice at this, you might just place the block. Again, taking some breaths, really feeling into the contact points with the wall, coming down and coming back up. We want both legs working together, no squeezing on the block, no shifting in the back or the shoulders. Everything else is just like it's on an elevator. It's coming down and it's coming back up. You're noticing how that feels. Maybe you come in and you squeeze again, but then you release, find a little more softness, and then come up without squeezing in on the block. So for some folks, that can be a really nice place to go next. You also might choose to use the strap on its own. So here we want to really think about, like, where was the strap before? Now I loosened mine to come all out, and you might have done so too. So, we're thinking about, about the similar distance between the feet, bringing the strap tight enough that it just stays in place. Connecting to the feet, connecting to the wall, feeling your breath. And then coming down and coming back up. The strap provides a little bit of context. We now don't have that stability of the block in between the legs. For some people, this is harder. So there's a tendency, you can see it happening as I'm demonstrating, there's a tendency for the knees to travel in, and when the knees travel in, the strap will fall, right? So this provides a little bit of information if you're a person who does that. You don't want to press out into the strap, but you do want to keep the strap in place as you're coming up and down here. And you might come down and hold. And only as you're holding there, maybe you press out into the strap. See how that's different. Release. See how that's different. And then without changing the strap, come up. And you might step away from the wall and remove the strap, taking a moment to notice how you feel. So these are some of the ways we can use the wall, and the wall provides some support and it provides some information, right? Lets us know if we're flattening the low back or we feel one shoulder moving faster than the other. Kind of helps us see what might be going on. And so sometimes it's useful to practice with the wall for quite a while. It's also useful to practice with the wall first. So we're getting that information and we're kind of setting the mind-body connection for how does the body move with the wall and the props, giving us that information before we come away from the wall. And then I like to, when you first come away from the wall, provide some propping. And for now, we'll just use the block, but you may find that there's a different combination here. That is what works best for you when you first come away from the wall. We're just going to place the prop, but now my back's not on the wall. So when my back's not on the wall, I'm going to be much less like I'm coming down on an elevator, right? And a little bit more, I'm going to have to lean a little bit more forward at the hip. So there's a hinge that happens here that's going to prevent me from losing my balance because I don't have that wall to lean on anymore. So I'm standing, I'm feeling that block. I'm feeling my stance, right? I'm feeling into like, where do I need my feet to have that block be there without necessarily needing to squeeze in on it. Find your breath. And then now we're bending the knees, moving at the hips and the ankles, a little bit of a hinge forward so the hips go back a little bit here. We want all the joints of the body to be happy. Not a lot happening in the spine. So the spine is staying pretty constant. And then if things feel good, you might come in and hold. I like to start by taking the arms back because sometimes when we take the arms up, we end up doing a little back bend and that adds a whole other layer here. So taking the arms back long through the back of the neck, looking at the floor in front of you, noticing what's happening in and around that block. And then without pressing on that block, you're going to come back up. So the block helps you find that stability, helps you find that coordination in the lower body as you're coming in and out of the pose now away from the wall. Eventually, we want to be able to feel that same coordination, that same smooth tracking with the knees without this kind of wobbly or unstable sensation that's happening. Nice hinge in the hips. Nice and long through the spine and the whole lower body working together to come in, whole lower body working together to come out. So we're moving in that direction and there's absolutely no rush. So when we rush, we really do ourselves a disservice. Take your time with the steps of this process. They are not less than. They are giving your body the support that it needs to move really well, to feel really good, and to build a really robust connection between the brain and the muscles so that your body can be coordinated, not just in Utkatasana, but then when you go out into the world. I hope this is really helpful for you. You may have questions. If so, I'd love it if you shared them in the comments, as well as any experiences that you maybe had when you tried this. I will definitely read those comments. I hope you enjoy exploring this in your own practice, in your own life. Take really good care, and may we all be balanced and well.